There's lots to talk about on this Top 40 Extra, so I better go ahead and get started. First off, on my fantasy playlist of May the 8th, 2022, at number 27, down from 17, Joe Jonas of the Jonas Brothers with William Shatner doing Clouds of Guilt. That's a fantastic record, a spoken record, a little bit of humming, a little bit of singing on that record, but I've already talked about it on another YouTube channel of mine, Mr. DJ Revels in the Second Millennium, and there's a countdown that I did, about a few months ago, and it's on that countdown. Actually, I took that song to number 1 on my fantasy playlist, but since I've already talked about this record, I'm going to talk about I'm going to go into a Top 40 Extra. Boy, an amazing discovery. Last summer, Robert Finley, Sold Out on You. We are talking about the blues, and you will not believe, you won't believe where I first heard this song at, when I didn't hear it anywhere else but on this outlet. CMT, Country Music Television. They played it in the edge rotation, the edge category. Boy, this guy, he can go from a falsetto to a full-blown gut bucket howl, like Howling Wolf. I mean, there's B.B. King, there's Booker T and the MGs. There's some R&B in there. I'm thinking about Bobby Blue Bland from back in the day, and Al Green doing Love and Happiness, although Ernest Jackson did a fantastic version of that song as well. It's sort of in that same genre. Robert Finley, he is from Louisiana. He lives in Bernice, Louisiana now, but he's moved up big time. He's from sharecropper's son of a sharecropper, and now he's got a white limousine in his driveway. But he hopes that some of the local kids will eventually use that limousine for proms and for graduation, which is a very, very generous act. I mean, this guy is a class act right here. And he's from Winsboro, Louisiana. Now, just bear with me on this because my notes are all over the place, and there may be some contradictions because one source will say one thing and then another source will say something else, and you're just, ah! But anyway, the bottom line is this. He grew up as a sharecropper. He was a son of a sharecropper in Winsboro, Louisiana. When he was real young, his dad had him working in the cotton fields, picking cotton. In that hot Louisiana sun, he had to fill a 7-foot sack with cotton. Had to do it per day. No electricity for much of his childhood. Had to walk 5 miles to school. But music, he came from a music, music was the thing. His dad gave him money to buy a pair of shoes. Go buy a pair of shoes. Robert came home with a guitar. He bought a guitar instead. His dad probably was not happy with that because his dad banned blues from being played in the house. But that didn't deter Robert Finley. That didn't deter his son at all. He sang in the church choir. He sang in gospel groups. Well, eventually he sang in gospel groups. He sang at picnics. He sang everywhere. Nursery homes. He sang in nursery homes, elementary school children. And he could imitate. He was not just doing blues, but he was doing James Brown, Mr. James Brown, Tyrone Davis, and Joe Simon, some of those great R&B singers from back in the 60s and 70s, although James Brown actually got started back in the 50s. And some of those great R&B acts from back in the day started out in these gospel groups like Sam Cooke, who was in the Soul Stirrers back in the 50s before he went secular. But that's another story. Back to Robert Finley. Robert Finley, his first exposure to rock and roll, he was at his aunt's house when, and I guess this was later on, maybe when he was a teenager or something, when he saw Elvis. He saw the King on Ed Sullivan. Now, I don't know if it was when Elvis originally performed there in 1956, because at that time, Robert Finley was just an infant, or maybe later on. But anyway, he saw the King on TV, and, he was there. And learned how to play the guitar and playing at all these events, playing at picnics. By 1970, he joined the Army. And he was he's transferring to Germany to be a helicopter and aircraft mechanic. But it turned out there was an opening, and the Army band, they needed a guitarist, a band leader, and he filled those shoes. He was playing in front of audiences when he was in the Army. He worked as a carpenter for decades before he was declared legally blind by his doctors. But he still played that guitar. He played in a lot of places. And there was a chance encounter that rocketed his career, or that provided some rocket fuel. It happened back in the early 20-teens, maybe around, I'm not sure the exact year, but he was playing this guitar. He was busking outside the King Biscuit Blues Festival. This was in Arkansas, and there was this fellow, he was in charge of a nonprofit organization. It was called Music Maker Relief Foundation. His name is Tim Duffy. He spotted Robert Finley playing the guitar. He was wild by it, and he supported Robert Finley, wanted him to tour around the world playing his guitar, and that led to a hookup with a guy named Bruce Watson. Now, one source has it that Bruce Watson was working with Fat Possum Records, which is a blues outlet. But now I also got another source that said it was Big Legal Mess Records. Well, anyway, the bottom line is this. Bruce Watson hooked up with Robert Finley, or the other way around. They made an album in Memphis, Tennessee. Bruce Watson was more interested in the soulful side of Robert Finley, although Robert Finley was mostly a blues player. But this song, Age Don't Mean a Thing, was the song, which was kind of a meshing of B.B. King, and I listened to it too. It's B.B. King and got Booker T and the MGs. I mean, it's a classic blues. He's just bringing it back. And the album took off. The album did okay. Well, it came to the attention. You're not going to believe this. Now we enter into the pop realm, or the alternative realm. Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys, the frontman of the Black Keys, he contacted Robert Finley. He wanted Robert Finley to contribute. He had 4 songs. Dan Auerbach had 4 songs. He wanted Robert Finley to contribute 4 songs to a project that Auerbach was working on. It was a graphic comic thing. It was called, Murder Ballads. Now, one story goes that they hooked up, they went to the recording studio, and Robert Finley, he nailed those 4 songs in one take. And at the end of the day, Dan Auerbach was he was swept away by this guy's talent. His phenomenal singing and his guitar playing. I mean, he had the blues lexicon down pat. Man, where you been? You're just off the streets and you had all this massive talent. They hooked up and, they got together. They made an album together. And now one source has it that the album was made in 3 days with some crack Nashville musicians. And the album was called Going Platinum. And after that, produced by Dan Auerbach, released off his label called Easy Eye Sound, and he toured, Robert Finley toured, and he played the U.S., he played overseas, and they hooked up again. He hooked up with Dan Auerbach on this would be his 3rd album, called Sharecropper's Son. And this song, Sold Out on You, it's about a relationship. The end of a relationship is when you shoulder the good, the bad. You try to make this thing work. You put a lot of energy into it and everything that comes with it. And at the end of the day, it's ran its course. And boy, he gives it with gusto. He's got I'm out of words. I am just out of words for this record. The formats for this record. Well, obviously, unfortunately, not pop. Although I did put it on my pop playlist. I'll show it to you in just a few minutes. I guess not country, although I got to give CMT. CMT deserves a lot of credit. They really been pushing the songs that are a little bit outside the country genre. At least they did last summer. And they played this video, and I give them a lot of credit for that. So I would say that the formats for this record would be an adult R&B station. I think it would fit in the format. Alternative. I think not the pop stations now. The pop audience may not be too receptive to a blues artist, but the pop station, I mean the alternative stations, there may be more openness to sliding in a blues artist, a fantastic blues record into the mix. And that's about it. Alternative, adult R&B. Gosh, I'm sure there's another one. There could be another format. I could see this being played on BBC Radio too. Because they have a pretty eclectic format from what I've seen of their playlist and from what I've heard of it. Or maybe BBC Radio 6. But that's overseas in England. But the blues, they've just done really well in England. Sonny Boy Williamson did really well in England, got a huge following over there back in the 60s. But back to Robert Finley, he's about 60-something, 67 or 68 years old now, and lives in Bernice, Louisiana. And the song Sold Out on You. Yes, I showed love on it. I mean, this was just different. To play a blues record on a pop station, even if it's an imaginary one, on a fancy playlist, took it to number 5. Here it is, folks. Robert Finley, Sold Out on You at number 5. And at number 1, this would be Easy on Me by Adele at number 1. The Jonas Brothers at number 2. Just imagine Robert Finley being played on that. Well, there's the Jonas Brothers. Who's in your head right here on W whatever. Now let's throw in some blues. We're going to do the blues with Robert Finley at 19 past 6 in the morning or in the evening here. But I'm getting silly now, but it's a great record. Robert Finley, Sold Out on You. It is a buzz pick. Big time. Take care. Dean Kurt signing off.